Hello and welcome to the next episode of Recharge Consult. I am joined today by CJ. CJ we've known for a number of months through our work with Standard Solar, one of the guiding lights within C&I solar installations. So very, very much looking forward to getting stuck into your journey. CJ, how are you doing?
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely not a problem. So give you some backdrop in terms of what our listeners are particularly interested in. We come every episode, we're inundated with questions around people's personal stories, journeys, etc. So for those that don't know you, just give us a bit of an introduction in terms of what you do, where you are now, and again, kind of who exactly you are.
Sure. CJ Colavito, VP of Engineering at Standard Solar. I've been with Standard Solar for over 13 years. I manage our entire engineering team, all things technical that goes on at Standard Solar outside of information technology. So we do the development and design of all our projects, the qualification, validation, and selection of all our major materials and equipment. We do all the designs, the engineering. We manage all of our third-party engineering services, and we support our business development team and our construction teams with their functions with developing and moving projects forward from projects we acquire from third-party firms and that we develop greenfield, as well as projects that we're putting into construction and long-term operation. And our engineering team also supports our long-term asset management and operations and maintenance group on projects that have ongoing operation.
Okay, just a little bit that you're responsible for then.
Yeah, we cover all the engineering and technical stuff. Yeah,
everything. Awesome. So, in terms of kind of your journey into renewables, it wasn't exactly kind of renewables immediately from the start, was it? You just talk through in terms of kind of how you ended up moving the.
Well, I mean, I wanted it to be renewables from the beginning, but it doesn't always work out that way. I had a little bit of a journey to get there. I'd say that I was in high school and I was looking at what did I want to do when I grow up and where did I want to go to school and what did I want to study. And during one of those exercises, I think it was probably some sort of high school assignment to figure out what you wanted to do and where you wanted to go. And I had never actually heard of engineering before. My father's an accountant. My mother is a reading specialist, a school teacher. And there were no engineers in my family before I studied engineering. So I learned what engineering was. I was like, it's the application of science and math in the real world to solve problems. I was like, heck yeah, that is exactly what I want to do. I'm great at math and I don't have to try hard. Thanks, Dad, for being an accountant. I guess
I don't think you get it via. I don't think it's a natural thing. So I'm pretty sure some hard work had to go into it.
Yeah, definitely. But math was always something that I was inclined towards, and I really enjoyed science. And I said, okay, math and science are my areas of expertise, not the arts or music. And so I said, engineering is definitely where I want to go. And I don't like the idea of just being in the hardcore pure sciences. I want to apply that science and technology. I want to apply the knowledge. So engineering made sense. And for me, if I was going to do this, I wanted to do something that was going to leave the world better than when I arrived. And I saw that the environment really needed the application of science and technology to solve problems and make it better. So I learned about renewable energy at that time. It's probably in 1996. And that's what I wanted to do from then onwards when I was like 15, 16 years old. So then I went to Virginia Tech because I grew up in Virginia, and that was by far the best engineering school in the area and nothing like in-state tuition. I got my mechanical engineering degree from Virginia Tech and I took every course in environmental engineering, renewable energy engineering, sustainability that I could along with my degree. And when I graduated, personally, I had some relationships that kept me from wanting to move out west where there was any actual semblance of a renewable energy or solar industry in California. So I ended up taking a job in shelf-stable food packaging, which was not in my space. It was the opposite of what I wanted to do. I needed a good job. I mean, 9/11 was still impacting the economy pretty poorly. So
Yeah.
I could either go to work for a nuclear plant with a bunch of people 30 years older than me, or I could look at this job in manufacturing, which had some carry forward of work that I'd done in my internships while I was a student. So that's where I went, but it was really just the first 4 years of my career until I was more established and ready to make a change.
It's awesome though, because, and I say this as someone who's worked in renewables or worked in recruitment within renewables for about 8 years, but for 13 and a half years ago, or even further back from that, for you to have the clear direction and clear plan that this is something that you wanted to go into, like, were there many like you? Because I see renewables, sustainability, everything that is now on the tip of everyone's tongue. Every grad wants to do renewables, every grad wants to do sustainability. So you seemingly were so far ahead of your time, because everyone that wanted to do it 15 years ago was probably, at some point, you might recognize this, and we're going to badged a bit of a hippie or dreamer, or again, everything is so far away, it's the future, but it's nowhere near the now. Where did you find, in terms of your class, there were similar people like you, or did you generally kind of lead the way in terms of doing everything environmental, everything?
Well, I mean, that's what I wanted to do. All kids have dreams, and then they
I
look
know,
at reality. So
but 15 years ago, not many people probably had that dream.
it was more than that. This was 20, 24 years ago. So I was, I mean, I decided that I wanted to do something in engineering to support protection of the environment, and I understood renewable energy, and that was a fantastic, exciting way to do that. And I looked at solar and wind and geothermal and all that stuff, and I said, that's what I want to learn about. So that's what I set my sights on, is to learn about that. When I graduated, 9/11 had happened in 2001. I graduated in 2003. It was still not a great time for jobs. And so I was just looking for something good to get myself established. So I wouldn't say that I've always been an idealist. So from that age, I was like, this is what I want to do. This is where I'm going to go. I've been very focused on, and I planned everything out. I mean, my kids are exactly 2 years apart. So, I mean, that's the engineer in me, I guess.
I was going to say, what would you expect from an engineer? Like, everything is logical, everything is planned out, right?
Yeah, my wife's an engineer too, so that helps. So I've always kind of had things planned and what I wanted to do. And there was a quote on my father's wall in his office when I was a kid. It said, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. And I thought about that a lot. And one of my biggest fears when I got out of college was that I would end up somewhere rather than be where I wanted to be. And there was a guy who worked at this plastic food packaging manufacturing plant with me. He got his master's degree and studied wind energy. And he was in the last, tail end of his career, last 5 years of his career. He never studied it again, never touched it, still thought it was amazing and interesting, was encouraging me to continue pursuing my dream in renewable energy. We were looking at sustainable packaging and plant-based plastics and all this other stuff that we thought was great. But I was in the wrong industry with the wrong product, because I couldn't do anything. We were making 1 billion disposable plastic cups a year. It was horrible compared to what I really wanted to do. So for me, that's just the way I was wired, is that I knew what I wanted to do and I was going to go after that. And working at my first job was really just an opportunity for me to learn about engineering and about working in a professional environment, solving problems, building relationships, working with customers. Those are all skills that I used and parlayed to my work at Standard Solar. I was more of a product development engineer and program management, and I used that. But I knew that I wanted to make a change, and I knew I didn't want to just stay somewhere and get stuck. And that's when my wife and I, when we were in college, we did some volunteer work, and we said, we want to do more volunteer work. We want to do something that actually makes a difference and matters for a more sustainable long-term impact, not just a couple a group of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed college students who go somewhere for a week and think they're doing something really great, and they're really just bringing some money and a little bit of cheer, but you're not really making a long-term impact. You're there for a week. So we said, we're going somewhere for a whole year. We quit our jobs, sold our cars, rented our house, put all our stuff in storage, and we moved to Nicaragua, where this stuff's from. And we lived in a rural northern village in Nicaragua for a year in an adobe hut with no running water, and we lived with the villagers. And it was a non-governmental organization in Nicaragua, founded and run by Nicaraguans, that used renewable energy technology and sustainable energy technology to improve the quality of life for the rural poor. And in that, it was mostly solar ovens and teeny tiny homemade solar panels that are like 60 watts each. We put a single solar panel on a clinic, a school roof, a submersible pump, well pumping station, and we would have like a single 12-volt battery for compact fluorescent light bulbs, or we do direct drive of submersible water pump to pump water out of a well. And it was really interesting application of the technology that was very relevant for that community. So we spent a year there. I learned Spanish. I learned a little bit about renewables. Really was arguably just fantastic timing, because that was in 2007 to 2008. In 2008 is right when things were starting on that. They were just starting that curve upward in the solar energy industry. And I was extremely motivated to say, I'm not going back to plastics. I'm not going back to food packaging. They offered me plenty of money to go back to food packaging. I took a huge 30% pay cut to go to renewables from what I was. And that's tough to do early in your career, especially after you spend a year not making any money. Yeah. But it was something that I was really passionate about and willing to do. And also with the support of my wife, I was able to take that risk. So I was interviewing with solar companies all over the DC metropolitan area and Virginia, from internet cafes in Nicaragua, trying to line up a job before the end of my volunteer year. And I talked to Standard Solar. I finally got in touch with the CEO at the time, which is Tony Clifford. He's semi-retired from the solar industry, but very well known. And he said, relax, finish your volunteer work, call me when you get back. And so that was a few months before we were done. I got back, I got my interview within the first week of returning, and I was sitting in a desk at Standard Solar 2 weeks after I got back from Nicaragua. And I've never looked back.
Incredible. So in terms of your journey, I know you've gone through multiple promotions, multiple different areas of the business as well, all engineering, but again, kind of touching on different areas. In your personal journey, are there any specific positions that stand out for you as being kind of a real, I guess, kind of almost like a really strong foundation for your learning of the industry for anyone that's looking to get into it?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I've kind of done different things at Standard Solar is because I was doing what the company needed at the time, especially early in the industry. I mean, we were a small residential firm that was big in our industry, in our area. So our business was focused on residential. I joined Standard Solar to help develop the commercial business, which we later sold off our residential division and only focused on commercial. And now that's exclusively what we do, is commercial and small utility scale community solar. So I started off in just drafting and engineering for project development and projects that we were building. And they really needed folks to manage the projects and see them through. So I was designing them, managing them. I was the field superintendent. I was directing the cranes. I was scheduling all our subs and working with them. Teeny tiny projects that cost a fortune. They were like $10 a watt projects. But we made it work. And then as we grew, they really needed me to run engineering. And that's really where my forte was and where my background was, what I wanted to do. So I moved over and just to establish the commercial engineering group. I picked my favorite engineer from our residential team and said, come over here, let's go do this. This is some exciting stuff. We can work on bigger projects. And then we grew the team from there. And we had a very good business development group. And we were able to build, megawatt scale projects in 2010, which was really big at that time. And we never really looked back. We continued to grow, and in short order, our commercial scale business revenue had dwarfed what we were doing in residential, and there was far less projects, and in some cases less headaches, but a lot more risky.
Yeah. So in terms of where Standard Solar were when you joined and where you are now, give us an idea of the difference between the two. I imagine over 13 and a half years, it's fairly different picture.
Startup to like legit, well-funded corporation with billions of dollars in backing. I mean, that's the difference. There was a time at Standard Solar in 2009 where they laid off 20% of the employees because we couldn't afford to make payroll. And then a month later, they said, we're having some trouble. We put a board up to indicate how many residential sales we made that month, and we had to get to at least 30. If we didn't hit 30, we were going to be in trouble. And every time the sale went in, everyone's holding their breath, and they'd write on the board and ring the bell. And everyone left in the company after that 20% layoff had to take a voluntary 20% pay cut. So the entire company took 20% pay cut for the balance of that year to survive, because we didn't have enough capital. We had to make the sales and keep things going. Keep in mind, this was during after the housing bubble collapsed, and the economy was not doing so great. And people were not investing in solar panels for their homes at that time. And financing options were not ideal. So it was mostly, cash deal early adopters. It was a very tough market. And we focused on developing commercial scale systems. I remember that I went to one of our government customers and helped close on a 77 kilowatt rooftop system, which at the time was really big. And I convinced Standard Solar to pay me a commission for that because I was the only person selling it, and it kind of helped make up some of my lost pay. And after 6 months of our pay cut, our company kind of got back on our skis back under us, and we restored they were able to restore everyone's salary back to normal and continue moving on. But it was tough, and we were in a really tiny office. I remember my desk was about as wide as my computer, and I was basically shoulder to shoulder with my boss and my coworkers, and our now president and CEO is just over the cube wall. We could look over and harass each other, and it was small. My desk backed up to the break room, and every time someone walked by, the aisle was so narrow because we were a startup trying to get desks in. They would bump into the leg of my chair. So I'm working, and people walking by, and their foot's kicking the leg of the chair all day long. I called that office affectionately the sardine can. Now we're on our third office since then, and Standard Solar has recently, during the pandemic, wasn't intended, but that's the way it ended up being. Had invested over $1 million in a new fit out of our new office. Now we're on the 9th floor of I think a LEED gold building. There's a balcony out from the break room overseeing the whole area. It's a beautiful open floor plan, floor to ceiling windows. We got free electric vehicle charging, a free gym, covered parking. It's a big difference. It's a big difference.
Is there part of you that looks at the graduates nowadays and then you're just like, you don't know how lucky you have it?
I look at the graduates these days and I'm thinking, I feel lucky that I got to do it when I did it, because I grew with the company the whole time. And I don't know, was I lucky that I picked the right company, or did I actually make the company what they are? I'd like to think it's a little bit of both. But I look at the graduates today and I think, for me, I want to hire people who are as passionate as I am about this. I'm not doing this because of money and success. I'm doing it because this is what I wanted to do since I was, 15 years old. and I still want to do it. I'm going to do it for the rest of my career as long as they'll have me. So I love it, and that's how you get the best people. Is you surround yourself with other people that have that passion. You can maximize their performance because they're doing what they love, and I'm doing what I love. So I'm working hard. They see me working hard. I'm trying to teach them, and they're working hard trying to learn, and we can grow and get better together. I believe in surrounding myself with passionate, motivated people, hopefully who are all smarter than me. I'm not the smartest guy on my team, and I've brought on a really good team of men and women in our engineering group that all work together and augment our capabilities. And I think that's really how you make a great team. So when I look at new engineers and new graduates, I'm thinking, if you have the passion and you've shown that you have the aptitude for learning, you can do this. It's hard and challenging, but that's what makes it fun. You're never going to get bored.
So is that what you see as being not necessarily the trick, because there isn't any trick to it, but is that what you would put down to your success? And saying gone through multiple promotions over the years with one company, which again I think is absolute credit to you, because I guess kind of nowadays a route, and the more common route, is to jump 2-3 years, pay rise here, pay rise there, etc. You've gone through the ranks, you've stuck through some really tough times. In terms of your background, in terms of why you think you've got to where you've got to, would you put it down to, I guess you would put it down to the drive, the sacrifice that you had to make, and ultimately the passion that has steered you through those tougher times?
Yeah, I would say passion for what I'm doing. I guess a little bit of the loyalty to stick it out, and it's not about the money. It's about the success. It's about willing it to win. I love winning, and I want to win, and I'm going to work hard to compete and win. And in this business, it's very competitive, and I've always enjoyed working with. I have a number of coworkers at Standard Solar who've been there 13 years as well. There's probably a good, I don't know, dozen of us, which isn't bad. And it's been fun working with that group, and I've really enjoyed a lot of the new folks that come in. So I think you do have to have the passion. You have to have the hard work. You want to put in the hard work to stick it out, because if you don't stick it out, how are you going to see what happens on the other end? How are you going to see the reward? And yeah, you do have to know when it's right, when it's time to hold them, and when it's time to fold them. For me, it's always made sense that I'm going to stick with it. And like I said, is it because I made Standard Solar get where they are, or is it because I just picked the right company? I'd like to think it's a little bit of both, but being able to tell what's going on, it's been a solar coaster. So I've watched many companies all around us rise and fall, shoot way past, and they're like, how did they do that? Where did they go? How did they get there? And then they come crashing down later, and you're like, they were being a little aggressive. So we've learned a lot and kind of watched it happen. So I think that a lot of that is passion, hard work, and then experience and learning from mistakes of our own and of others. Standard Solar has always held ourselves to a very high standard of quality, namely of installation and design. And we've also always held ourselves to a very high level of integrity. The solar energy industry has somewhat of a reputation of not always being that, but that's something we will not yield on. And if we lose, then we lose. But we're not going to sacrifice our quality and integrity and robustness of our design and construction. So if that means we're not going to be the best and biggest, because maybe we're still the best, but we're not going to be the biggest, then fine. We don't want to be that.
Yeah.
And if you do and you're successful, then great. But we've seen too many times that it falls apart.
Yeah, it always tells, right? And Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. Hopefully those perceptions are changing. Again, you probably point to a number of other industries that were less mature at the beginning, kind of some boomed, some bust. But again, kind of it was everyone gets tarred with the same brush, sadly, in the world that we live in. But I hope now we can see kind of the quality players are the ones that are, I guess, kind of are developing a niche, are becoming really well known for probably one or two things, really. And again, I think in the age of social media and everything else, review referrals, everything else goes a hell of a lot further than perhaps it, or definitely when it did, when again, kind of you and I first came into the industry. So I know you've gone through some tough times already, particularly when you were coming into the market, and you mentioned some tough times commercially when you first started out. How have you found the last 2 years? Because I found it really interesting in terms of I have a lot of friends in different industries, and I guess kind of how solar seems to have just kept on trucking when so much was much more adversely affected over the last couple of years, particularly. But given what you've been through, where do you rate kind of the pandemic and how that's impacted kind of the company and you personally?
Well, if we continue with the metaphor of the solar coaster, this freight train cannot be stopped.
Yeah.
We're going to keep moving. The solar industry is going to keep moving. You can hit us with supply chain issues. You can throw a pandemic at us. We're going to keep moving. You cannot stop it. There's too much momentum behind what we're doing. And we're not driven just by making money and investing in projects. We're driven by the higher purpose that a huge chunk of this industry is in it from the beginning, is because we're here to fight climate change. And we have to do it. So me personally, it stinks sitting at home in my office all day, meeting people virtually by video. I really enjoy being there in person and interacting and having that interpersonal part. So that's been a challenge. Supply chain has really been a challenge, and permitting and interconnections are extremely difficult. A lot of the authorities having jurisdiction just went home and locked up for a while during the pandemic, and they're like, sorry, what about your permit? I don't know, I'm not reviewing stuff. So that's been a challenge, but permitting and interconnection were never easy before. They just got a little bit more difficult. So we stuck to it. We fought through the tough times. We pressed on. We looked at our pipeline and managed what we needed to do. And we've been smart and conservative about the procurement and what we were doing. I can't say we've done everything perfectly. We didn't buy a bunch of modules for the safe harbor and then find that the ITC was extended, and they're like, I bought a lot of panels and not valuable as I thought. So, we've had some mistakes, but we pushed on. And now that we're a bigger, more experienced company, we can withstand some of that. We don't have to be perfect to make it through. But early in the early days, you make a mistake, you might go out of business. We're well past that. So the pandemic has not been easy, but we've done well. We've continued forward. We've had excellent financial backing. We've had a very robust pipeline of projects, and we weathered the storm of the shutdown and the slowdown. We continued developing, designing projects. We continued operating our projects. A lot of our construction portfolio really got slowed up. I mean, 2 years to build a 4 megawatt ground mount is absurd, but that's what it has taken on some of these because of how long the permitting and interconnection and difficulty with labor and material supply. But we had a robust pipeline, and we just kind of, one project falls back, another one fills in the place, and we continue forward and we pick up those projects as we go.
I'll say so. In terms of the challenges that you faced over the last couple of years, which of those do you see, I guess, kind of being a particular challenge moving forward, and which of those seem to have kind of resolved themselves?
I think that the industry understands the supply chain now, and it's not really a limiting factor. It is something you have to manage and plan for. So I don't see that as a long-term issue. And the supply chain has been very good about responding and reacting to shortages. Supply and demand is a very powerful dynamic. So as prices go up, more things come online and we can get going. So I don't think that's going to be a long-term problem, and we haven't seen that. Similar with shipping, it's all part of it. Permitting and interconnection have been the thorn in our side, especially in the commercial scale space, for a long time. And that hasn't really changed. What it really takes is a level of experience and skill to get through it. Excellent developers. Standard Solar takes an approach of working with regional experts and developers who know their market, who know their customers, who know their utilities and their authorities having jurisdiction, to develop projects that we can then acquire later in the stage of development. So we're not necessarily enduring the 2-3 years they invested in a project before we get to notice to proceed or construction. So that's one way we mitigate that. We still do greenfield projects, and we still co-develop projects with our partners from the start. We still respond to RFPs. So we have a mix of all of those things to manage the issues. Until the way they regulate utilities or the way they go through permitting, and if they had unified zoning ordinances, which will never happen, it's the permitting and interconnection is not necessarily going to get easier. And what we've seen, as more solar has been deployed and some of these authorities having jurisdiction have had bad experiences, it's gotten more difficult because now they have more hurdles to jump through, more things that they check, more requirements before they give you your permit. So it's just required us to get better and smarter and be able to handle it. So I think it's more of a function of recognizing the challenges, preparing for them, and then putting that into your schedule and budget.
Nice. So I think one of the things that it really kind of comes to the fore from both your own personal journey and everything that you're saying here is effectively, can you mention the solar coaster? Really, kind of adaptability is the key to life, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So whatever changes, and again, kind of, I think whether you look across renewables in general, it's developing so quickly that, as you mentioned, kind of when you were at the early part of your career, the industry was vastly different to where it is now. Attitudes have very much changed for the better, we would hope. But yeah, as I said, but we will probably be in a very different picture in 5 years' time, let alone 10, 20, 30. So massively exciting. Is there what particularly excites you about the industry? As someone who's been in it, as I said, 15 years, gone up from an early age, kind of wanting to be in there. What stands out for you as being kind of particularly exciting and energizing from your perspective about the industry as it moves forward?
Well, I tell you, it's not gotten any easier. It's definitely more challenging and more interesting.
How do you look so young if it's so easy?
It's just I think what's exciting is that it's a really challenging engineering problem. Engineers love that stuff. I mean, we do. We want to be challenged. Half the people I talk to say, I got to a point I'm kind of bored. This is cookie cutter, or I've done this, or I haven't seen anything new. And it's like, well, what have you been doing? Because at Standard Solar, we got new stuff every day, every week. I'm still learning new things. It's exciting because you can't get bored because you're constantly being challenged, because as we do different things and move into different markets, it's getting harder. It's getting more unique. I mean, we're doing 10-foot ground clearance single axis trackers for agrivoltaic opportunities in Massachusetts. And then we're doing interesting things with solar plus storage and DC coupled energy storage with PV and really high DC ratios. We're playing with bifacial technology and other types of approaches on how we're designing systems. And then you got just different states with different applications. When you move the PV from one location to another, I can build a system in Maryland, and that same exact system, if I built it in northern New Mexico, would produce 30-40% more energy. The same exact system. It's a totally different approach to how you would design because of the solar resources, the incentives, the rate structure. It's just a lot of complexity and challenges. So you think you learned it and you know what you're doing, and then you get a new application. You're like, I've got to reset all my rules of thumb, all my caveats, and reanalyze this from the elemental level to make sure it's still right. So I would say it's still exciting and interesting because we got a lot of work to do to fight climate change. What are we, 2-3% of the total electricity generation in the US? It's nothing. We got to get up to, I hope, 50 to 80% supplied by solar. So there's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of problems. And as we grow in the amount of solar we deploy and grid penetration, we got new problems that we never even had to deal with. So it's just very interesting and challenging, and we've got a lot of work to do. So you don't have time to get impatient or bored.
I love it. Like the enthusiasm that just like radiates off you is incredible. And I love the engineer's mindset whereby you are like visibly excited about problems. Anyone else would be like, oh my God, what's going on? Engineer's mindset is clear the way, I'll fix it. This is amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know why. It's just it's how we think, and I want to hire more engineers who want to do that. So let's go get them.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the way that it's got to be, and it, as kind of we mentioned before, like in an emerging industry, that is not going to be the same. It's probably not going to be the same in 2 years' time, let alone 5, 10, however many. Like again, going back to that adaptability in terms of that's, and I guess kind of that is engineering in its essence for you in terms of the change, the problem solving, the evolution of a problem, and finding a solution. So yeah, I honestly the enthusiasm for what you do just radiates off you, which I think is again a brilliant trait. And for someone who's grown up wanting to do it and has sacrificed so much to get there, I think is just absolutely incredible. So I know that Standard Solar, you particularly are looking to grow again, kind of as the industry and the projects and everything else grow. For someone really keen to get into the industry, like what's the easiest way of reaching you personally?
To reach me?
Yeah.
I guess we got lots of job postings on our website, and they all go through our human resources group, and they fire all the resumes to me. So that's how I see most new candidates. Some folks get through networking and communication. My LinkedIn profile is public, and I've done some recruiting trips to local schools and universities as well to try and find the right candidates. But I would guess that if you want to find me, you'll be able to find me. I'm on LinkedIn.
Be an engineer problem solver, right?
Yeah, my information's on our website. We've got jobs posted on our website. You can find us through Indeed and DC Jobs and standardsolar.com. So
if I was a graduate, CJ, and really wanted to, or if I was in another industry and I was thinking, right, okay, with all of the buzz around renewables, around anything else, what advice would you give to me in terms of this is what you need to get into the industry? Whether I'm looking for a career change into renewables or I'm a graduate that's looking to break in, what do you think is absolutely key for anyone looking to get into the market at this time?
Like I've said, for me, I want to hire engineers that are passionate about this. I don't want to hire people who are trying to just make a lot of money. Looking for people who want to work in solar and renewables because they're fighting climate change, because they want to protect the environment, because this is something that's important to them. Because those people are going to stay in this industry, whether or not they're with Standard Solar. This is what they want to do. So I want to hire people that's what they really want to do. So if you want to get in this industry, then show it. How do you show it? Show a commitment, go the extra mile, put in the effort, take the extra courses in renewable energy, environmental engineering, sustainability. Show me that this is something you want to be doing. Get involved in other extracurriculars, whether you're doing volunteer work with grid alternatives or other organizations you're getting involved in that shows that it matters to you, not just looking for a job. If you're just a regular job applicant looking for a job because you saw our posting, it's the swipe left or something. But moving on, it's easy to sniff out. So I think the first thing is show the passion and put in the effort. if you're kind of like the path I had, where you were in a potentially completely disassociated industry, or maybe a parallel industry, like folks are coming from electric distribution utilities or other electrical engineering or power engineering fields that weren't necessarily renewable. Show the effort that this is really what you want to do. For me, I could not fathom really. Number one, I'd made a commitment to myself that I was going to do volunteer work. Number two, if I was going to do that, I wanted to do something with renewables. So I worked really hard to find the right opportunity for me. So, I mean, for my example, I felt like doing that volunteer work in Nicaragua in renewable energy was, how could you show more that you were passionate about doing this and transitioning? And when folks asked about my previous work, I was like, yeah, it was interesting. It wasn't what I wanted to do. Here are the qualities and skills that I learned that I think can apply to this industry. But I know I have a lot to learn, and I'm not coming in expecting you to treat me like I'm a 5-6 year post-graduation engineer. Treat me how you would, and I'm going to earn my spot and build my way up. I see a lot of engineers come in, they're from parallel industries, and they want big bucks, and they want to be treated like they know everything. And if you come into solar and you're new, you're not going to know it. And it's going to take some time to get up to speed. For me and what we do, it takes 5 years for a good engineer to get up to speed to be like a real expert in doing commercial scale and community solar, solar PV engineering. It takes 5 years. And it takes time because you can't replace the experience.
Yeah, it's a dedication and making sure that people know that and are willing to make the effort and have the drive to do that.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right, fantastic. Well, look, CJ, it's been amazing to speak to you. As I said, I think the enthusiasm is something that you just can't feign and can't replicate unless you're in the same boat. So wish you every success in terms of the endeavors, in terms of the betterment of your career, and again, kind of the growth of Standard Solar. And we'll probably get you on in next year at some point and see exactly where we are there.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Will.
Brilliant. Cheers, CJ. Take care, mate.